You're listening to From There to Here, a Star Trek Enterprise podcast. Today's episode is Fight or Flight.
According to Wikipedia, the plot goes as follows. The human starship Enterprise encounters an alien ship that is their first chance of first contact, but find hull breaches and no activity. Captain Archer, Ensign Sato, and Lieutenant Reed board the ship to investigate, and on the ship, Sato soon faces her fears.
This is, of course, Season 1, Episode 3, directed by Alan Croker. That's a name I recognize as having directed Star Trek
I recognize it too.
Music by G.H. Hadaway. Original air date October 3rd, 2001, with guest appearances by Jeff Ricketts as Alien Captain and Ephraim Figueroa as translator voice.
John Billingsley, who plays Dr. Phlox, apparently had some difficulty wearing the spacesuits, and while they were filming the episode, pulled off his prosthetic ears when trying to remove his space helmet. How about that? I didn't know that.
Very interesting. Seems
like a mellow guy.
Some people get claustrophobic,
I guess
and
so.
you can't predict what's going to happen.
Strangely, it was Hoshi. Hoshi was one that is supposed to be claustrophobic. So.
Right. But she's not wearing prosthetic ears.
When I was watching this, I imagined that whoever wrote it was probably sitting around, and as they broke the story, were thinking, let's invert it. Let's do the opposite of what people would expect, where they go out and immediately become overwhelmed, which does actually happen in this episode. But it starts off the first half. They're actually kind of bored. And they've been flying around and nothing's happening. I need something to happen.
We haven't found anything yet. Not even a good thing has happened. Nothing has happened.
Yeah, but not to bury the lead. I enjoyed this one. I thought it was a good second episode, or third, whatever you want to call it. But a good follow-up to the pilot. What did you think?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would say it was I was entertained. I do have thoughts, but it was a good episode, and it is refreshing to see our Starfleet people be scared or even excited because of a potential mission or hazard. It's obvious. I mean, they clearly were doing that on, purpose. That was the whole point of the show, was to, not just this episode, but the show was to, this is our entry point into space. They're not going to be comfortable with everything. And I think this episode did a pretty decent job at depicting the quasi-realities of space travel a la Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had the allegory of the space slug and Hoshi.
I'll start there.
Okay.
That's my first comment. I actually thought that was too heavy-handed, and it wasn't necessary. I think the episode would have been better off without it, and actually more time with Hoshi. And maybe give her a scene or two, because the slug takes
Do you think that slug was real, or was that a special effect?
I don't know.
Like a prop. I don't mean like a CG special effect.
I know. I don't know. I really don't know.
Because that means they had to have like a slug wrangler on set.
Well, they got something for everyone. But that's my thought, is that the slug, the B story, was way too heavy-handed for its connection to Hoshi. I mean, literally, they say it in dialogue where they're talking about the worm, but then
it's Phlox. She's having a conversation with Phlox.
And he turns it saying, well, maybe the worm can go teach or something like that. And it's like, okay.
Obviously referring to her.
Right.
Yes.
And I honestly think it would have just been more interesting.
You kind of expected Phlox to turn around and say, everybody got that?
Right. Right. But I could have done without it. As we work our way through the episode, obviously Hoshi's terrified to go on that ship. She has a bad experience on her first visit to the ship. Mm-hmm. And then she's better the second time around, right? We got it. We don't need it spelled out. Now, maybe if they had done the B story with the worm a little more subtle, maybe it would have felt different, but it just felt like, get on with it already. And I would have rather had an extra scene. For example, she has the scene where she goes into Archer's ready room, his office, and says, hey, I think I'd probably be better off here on the ship. And she's clearly trying to get out of the mission. And he's like, sorry, you got to go. And he's like, is there anything else? And she goes, no, sir, never mind. She leaves. Fuck it. Let her come out and say, I'm damn terrified. I'm scared. I was not trained for this sort of stuff. She may have went through the training for the suits and all that, but she's not Starfleet. She's a language expert, So of course she's going to be scared. Let me see her talk to Archer about that. Or instead of the worm, just go to Phlox. Phlox makes it clear later in the series that in addition to medical degrees, he also holds psychology degrees. So he can function as a ship counselor, essentially. And forget the worm. Just have her go in there and say, can you give me something for anxiety? Oh, well, what's going on? Well, I'm going to go on this mission. And just let them talk it out. He basically is giving her that speech anyway. Just cut the worm out and just do it for real. So we can see more of the steps that she goes through to conquer this thing. Long story short, I think the worm was too much.
Well, anyway. I'm surprised your reaction was so...
Maybe I sound more intense than
it was such a
I just think
excited reaction to that.
It was the first thing I thought after that first scene with the worm.
I didn't think it was that heavy-handed. I agree it was to some degree, but not as much as you did. A couple weeks have passed since the pilot, and they're going around in space, moving along Warp 5. They haven't encountered anything yet. People are going about their business on the ship, but they're getting a little antsy.
They're looking for some action.
They're looking for some action, yes.
Yeah.
Then they come upon a ship. They hail it. They're not getting a response. They go on board. They find the crew has been murdered, and the crew their blood is being extracted by some kind of device.
They're hanging like meat from the ceilings.
You think when they found that, they would probably wonder, well, then whoever did this is probably coming back.
Well, they said that.
But they didn't seem to think about it.
They didn't seem worried.
At that time,
like, what if they came back right now?
They didn't. Not until they came back.
Yeah.
Did they? Looks like they've come back. Yeah, that's why they set up all that equipment. Duh.
Obviously, they're coming back.
So these aliens that you never see come back in a ship that looks very
scary,
like a scorpion or something like that.
Yeah, it's meant to look like a bad guy ship.
It was meant to put fear into you. Yeah. Basically, that's why it looked like that. And they have to now fend off this ship, hence fight or flight.
Right.
That said, I enjoyed the Hoshi stuff. I thought the conversation she had with Archer about her nervousness, wanting to be on the other side of the ship. She mentioned, the stars are going the wrong way.
I didn't mind that.
I thought that was fine.
Yeah.
I thought she was the right amount of nervous for her first time out.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I thought that we got a little bit more Malcolm in this episode.
Yeah, we did.
We did, which was nice because, like we said in the previous pod, we didn't get enough of him.
Right.
And there's better Malcolm stuff coming.
Yes.
Better stuff coming. But it was nice to see him get to play with his toys. He got to shoot off a few torpedoes and fix the accuracy because they weren't working very well.
Right.
It was nice to see the tech being used. And also, a thought I had while watching this was, this was a series that was canceled before 7 seasons, so it broke the mold.
Right.
Only had 4, and I thought, it's a good show. It really is. And I wondered, would it have fared better if it came right after Next Gen? What if it was made in place of Deep Space Nine? Think about it. We would have gotten the Next Generation, then we'd have gotten the previous generation. I think it would have done better. What do you think?
Maybe. Much as I hate to sort of back this idea, because I do think it really comes down to good stories, but I do think there was a bit of Star Trek fatigue going on. And when I say fatigue, I don't mean that the Star Trek audience didn't want Star Trek anymore. You got to think about it. That show had been carried by the same people for how long? Since 87 until whenever Enterprise finally went. That's a lot of bloody Star Trek. And as has been pointed out, they did start to repeat themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's going to happen. And it doesn't mean they didn't get new writers and all that, but the show had a feel and a style that wouldn't allow certain stories. So you're going to start bumping up against stuff. And I think this show did it too. Not this episode, but the show, they certainly had repeat episodes that have been done in previous Trek before. And when I refer to fatigue, I think that's the fatigue that Star Trek audiences were feeling. They were like, well, I've seen this before. Mm-hmm. But like So if you say, what if this came after TNG? Yeah, it might have been different because by the time TNG, season 5, because Deep Space Nine started in season 6 of TNG. I think it went for the last 2 years, 2 or 3, and we were starving for more Star Trek. We would take anything they gave us, and we wanted it, and all of that. So maybe it would have fared better. Unfortunately, it wouldn't have had the production value that Enterprise as it is has, but maybe the stories would have been different. Although I would almost argue maybe that wouldn't have been a good idea because what it needed, the Enterprise, the show, grit, for lack of a better word, that you would not have gotten in a Trek produced in the mid-90s. Especially a show that intends to get out onto the dirt more often, literally. There's episodes, maybe even in this first season, where they're looks like they're on a beach or something like that, and like they got out. Whenever the characters were outside, as far as I remember, the actors were outside, as opposed to TNG, where it was almost always an exterior-interior set.
Oh, yeah.
And it had that look. So maybe we would have liked the show less because it would have come off as cheesy or something. I don't know. I'm just waxing.
You make some good points. You could be right on those.
If Voyager had come out in place of Enterprise, people probably just would have canned it, and Voyager would have had 4 seasons, and that was it. Because Voyager repeated a lot of stuff too.
Something that we got in this episode was something that will become a regular feature was T'Pol, Trip, and Archer dining together.
Right.
They're trying to set up a 3-person dynamic, very
the holy
similar.
trinity of
yes,
TOS.
That's clearly what they were going for.
Yes, obviously.
I'm not against it, but I
and never, literally the Southern guy is the emotional one.
Yes, I'm not against them having these scenes together.
They get better.
They do get better, but I never felt like I could take it or leave it.
I remember. Do you remember this? I remember when we were watching this in its initial run, that we commented on those dinner scenes and the big 3 of this show, Archer, T'Pol, and Trip, and how at the time we felt it was forced, that they were forcing this dynamic of the 3, putting them in dinner together and all that. We talked about that a lot. I remember that.
We did?
We did.
I don't remember.
Well, I've got 4 years on you, so I remember it a little more clearly than you. I'm not saying you were an
when this happened.
I'm just saying I remember talking about that with you and our other brother, and we did comment that stuff felt forced. And when I look at it now, however, you and I just watched this episode together, it doesn't feel quite that way. I think this really goes along with that thing we talked about during the pilot episode, where the difference between how we looked at it initially and how we look at it now. That's not to say that the show didn't make mistakes. It did, but our perception of things is different. Just like when we watch Bashir now in early seasons of DS9, he's more tolerable because we like what he becomes.
Right.
But the dinner scene they had in this, I didn't mind it. And it really, Scott Bakula really drives that scene, and it make you feel uncomfortable because he is about ready to pop, and you can feel it.
During the dining
scene in this episode. I think they did a really good job of the awkward tension. Everyone's thinking about it. He's clearly thinking, and he's the one facing the camera. The other 2 are the peripherals. And Trip just keeps pushing until he realizes he's gone too far, and Archer internally snaps, and you see it. And he's made that choice in his eyes.
Yeah.
But it's all because of that awkward tension. And I like how that played out. It was interesting.
I suppose I didn't find it as tense as you did.
Maybe tense is the wrong word.
Well, I didn't think it was as... Did you... Okay. The way
I could feel Archer's emotion.
Well, the way you just described it was as if it was beneath the surface. I thought it was very much on the surface.
Oh, it was. But no one was talking about it until Archer did. Until he said, so what about this? You know, you don't have a problem with that? until he snaps
Right.
and starts going.
Well, this behavior of theirs, because what happens in the episode, which is something I left out in the description, is when they encounter this ship, they leave the crew and they just go about their way.
Right.
Now,
they listened
Archer feels
to T'Pol's advice, who said, we should leave.
we should just leave. And they do take that advice.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? The Vulcans have more experience out in space.
Well, like she said, we wouldn't even have gone on the ship.
Yeah, we wouldn't even done that.
And she did encourage them not to go on the ship in the first place.
Which is good because, well, I mean, it's good that she did that.
Yeah.
Having T'Pol on there, it juxtaposes the rationality
Right.
side of things, which is what Vulcans really kind of embody.
Sure.
Rational, logical thought, and then the curiosity that humans naturally have, and their empathy that they naturally have. And the curiosity sometimes is going to get the better of them.
Right.
And that's where that fight or flight response comes in. Like, what do you do?
I do wish, especially in that initial scene before they board the ship, Archer makes every reasonable attempt to make contact before boarding the ship, because he's aware that's a bit touchy. You don't know what you're going to walk into. That is someone else's ship. Maybe you shouldn't do that. But he feels like something could be wrong, so he feels justified in doing it. And when T'Pol raises her
Concern.
logical concern of, that there's reasons why we shouldn't, and these are these reasons, he outright ignores her. Like, literally, she'll be in the background. What about blah, blah, blah? He'll turn and go, all right, this is what we're going to do. He just completely ignores it.
Well, that is her position on this ship. She's not a star. Well, they're not Starfleet.
No,
she's not technically. She's an advisor. That's her position, isn't it?
Well,
She's not part of the crew technically.
At this point, I don't know, because
It's not till later in the show when she becomes an actual crew member.
I get what you're saying.
Yes.
However, even in the pilot episode, when Archer was off the ship, she was in command. So she's not Starfleet, but she is
true.
She has her role as first officer.
Okay.
It's just like Kira on DS9. I would say it's more akin to that. But I do wish Archer, to demonstrate his intelligence, had said to her, look, under another set of circumstances, you would probably be right, but something could be wrong, and we need to at least try. And just acknowledge that what she's saying, he's acting as though what she's saying is an annoyance to him, sort of. Like, he's going to go anyway. I think he should have, as a smart captain, as a smart person, just said, I totally get what you're saying, and I hope you're wrong, but we're still going on, at least that. I would have liked that, because I thought it was a little too dismissive of what any rational person would see as probably good advice, even if you choose not to follow it. What do you think?
These characters are the embodiment, the placeholder of what will become later Star Trek. What we see,
Sure.
how we see the crew of, the D act, when they encounter a different species, and they always can't help but get involved or impose their morality on the situation.
Oh, I know. And I'm not saying they shouldn't.
But that's exactly what's happening here.
Yeah.
They want, part of Archer wants to accept T'Pol's advice, but humans just can't help it. They're driven by this morality that
I completely understand. And he expresses that at the tail end of that dinner scene. But I do think maybe it seems like a minor thing, just in that initial decision to board the ship. I do wish he had not just blown her off. He's going to do what he's going to do, but acknowledge that there's nothing wrong with what she's saying. If they had walked on that ship and it turned out that what they read as faint biosignatures were just how their bodies worked, and they were all sitting there with guns and everyone got slaughtered the second they walked on, she would have said, I told you, so that could have happened, and so just a little bit of him saying, I know, but we got to do it. And then you could still have that dinner scene, because once they do find that crew slaughtered and she's like, we should go because these guys are coming back. And he does realize, okay, we could be greatly outmatched. We don't need to die today. So he did flight, in that moment. And I don't think he was wrong to do that. But then when it challenged his humanity, he decided to go back, and it would still work. You know, it doesn't. To me, it only would add to his character to show some dimension,
humanity, but also I think pride and maleness. I would say, like to run. You don't want to run away.
Yeah, sure.
There is that. I think there is that factor in there as well, which is, I mean, Kirk does the same thing.
No, I get it.
So
I get it. But if you were on TOS's Enterprise and Spock had said, and he did on many occasions, Captain, I don't think we should do this. Kirk would say, well, we're going to do it, and here is why. You know, he would address, he never just blew off Spock. Spock very often gave contrary opinions. And Kirk still made his captain's decision, but he would always acknowledge what Spock said because he respected what he was saying.
But it's this conflict that makes it interesting.
Yeah. It doesn't mean there isn't a conflict still. It just shows him for me, it would show him to be a good captain. That's all. You know, and a good communicator. Like you can't shit on your first officer all the time. You know, you gotta give him some lip service at the bare minimum, or else he'll become Janeway. And I'm not saying he becomes Janeway at all. I'm just saying in this scene, that moment, that stuck out to me is all I'm saying. You know,
at the end, I did find it a bit unrealistic considering how they had established this alien vessel, which seemed to be much more technologically advantaged.
Oh, you mean the hostile one?
Yeah.
Okay.
They shot at it and their torpedo bounced off of it.
Yeah.
And then when they shot another one, it blew it up.
The aliens blew it up en route.
The other aliens that came to help, destroyed it with their help. But there's the second torpedo they fired, when they fired from the rear, actually hit the ship and there was an explosion.
No, that's the third.
Okay.
They had the first that Malcolm fired and it bounced off of their shields. Although I'm a little confused about that because his targeting sensors meant he couldn't aim it, but it hit the shields, so it bounced off like it wasn't going to be effective. And then the second one he fired was going straight at them, and the bad guys themselves shot that torpedo before it impacted and just blew it up. Then the third one, the Enterprise fired as they were leaving because Malcolm said, "Oh, I've got my targeting sensors right," and magically it like penetrates their shields and makes a big explosion.
Okay.
I was a little unclear about that.
It caused a little pause in my mind, but it didn't take me out of the episode. But I felt it was a bit of
I just didn't understand.
A lapse, and
I felt like they didn't quite explain the problem.
They didn't.
You know,
one little moment that I liked in the episode was when they were hailing the ship for the first time, and Archer is saying, "Oh, we're such and such and blah blah blah," and then Trip says, "Oh yeah, don't forget to say, oh yeah, we're from Earth." Yeah, I think that was a fun little touch because no one's gonna know where they're from. No one's gonna know what Earth is.
It's not like in TNG where he can go, "I'm Captain Picard of the Federation Starship." Most people know what that is.
Federation is.
You may not know where Earth is, but you sure know what the Federation is if you live in the Alpha Quadrant.
So it's layering in like these aliens they're going to encounter aren't going to have
tell them who we are.
A clue where they come from. Probably never heard of Earth before. Probably
don't want to point to our home world, but
I thought it was a good idea that.
No, it was fun. It was different.
Well, this was another thought. A good idea that the first alien they encounter is hostile. Yeah, and it's proving to be like
this is the second one.
It's dangerous out there, which is something going forward. I know is something that Archer brings up. He says later, I think maybe in the second or third season, that I wish we would have had more torpedoes or more Marines on the ship.
I remember that. He does. He's talking to the sister ship. I forget what the Columbia, the Columbia captain. And she's like, "Is there anything you would do differently?" He said, "I wish we brought more guns." Basically.
Right. It's dangerous.
Which was going to lead me to something that I liked.
Okay.
We talked about the torpedoes and how they weren't working. I liked that. I like that the humans, our heroes, are outclassed because, I mean, I shouldn't say any, but most of the species they're going to run into have more than just one ship out there. They've been out in space for a little while, so they would have developed more advanced technology. We're the little kids on the block, and I liked that the first two that we fired at that ship didn't do anything, and Archer's like, is that the best we got? Until they get phasers later, which they do, which I kind of almost wish they hadn't, because that almost makes it, well, you're just doing TNG now. I liked it when it was just torpedoes, because you realize torpedoes are less effective than, because they're just bombs.
That's true.
And I like that it makes our heroes not the advanced one. The Enterprise D was always the toughest kid on the block.
Yeah.
And the only thing that could beat it was numbers. You know, if he goes up against one Klingon ship, one Romulan, Picard always was like, we got you. It was only when there's two where he was like, all right, maybe we should talk.
Well, I didn't find it an error in that sense that they got phasers. I remember they got phase cannons, right? That's what they call it.
I don't mean to imply that it was an error.
Well, it didn't. They couldn't make it work at first.
And I like that.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I like that. But I like, at least at the beginning of the series, that they were usually outclassed. And that's interesting. That's fun. It's fun to see them be the...
This is not the first time. They will be.
No, they're going to keep running into this. Yes. And I like that. That is interesting. I wish the show had held on to that longer. You know, I feel like by the time we hit like maybe the third season, they're a little more tougher, which they should be. They've grown, but still their technology compared to pre-existing technology is still going to be behind. You know, I just wish they had carried that all the way through. You know what I mean?
So some standout moments in my mind were Phlox talking to Hoshi. Again, Phlox hasn't really gotten a lot to chew on yet, but as I've watched this episode and I got to see Phlox again, I was reminded, man, like I really like Phlox.
Phlox is cool.
He's a really good character. He's very wise, but he's not preachy.
No, he's mellow.
He's very mellow. He's like a father figure to them.
He is. He has enough experience to relish the differences. But I also like that they don't shy away, and I don't think they ever do with his character, that he sees things just a little differently. Like, he thinks it's a pretty good idea to feed this worm to his other creature. As far as he's concerned, this one's probably not going to make it. This one only eats live ones. Right. So why not just do it?
Yeah.
And he would have, if it wasn't for Hoshi, he would have fed that thing to it.
Phlox is going to get a lot of good stuff later on.
Yeah, he does.
But in this episode, not so much, but I did enjoy that part. The stuff,
I liked his when Hoshi sits with him and they eat.
Yeah.
And or is that, no, I'm sorry, that's Trip, isn't it? Where he's like, have you smelled Lieutenant whatever after she works out? She smells like a Nausicaan. Yeah. And these two, I think they're going to mate. Can I watch? Yeah, he's fascinated by humans. And he's on his own journey of exploration, just like the humans are, only he's watching us.
Well, he's very open-minded. He likes experiencing new things.
Yeah, and I like that he's open-minded. You know?
I did enjoy Hoshi. She has a little bit of an arc. No,
she was good in this.
I thought the actress did a good job. Linda Park. She did a good job. She got pretty emotional at the end when she had to talk to the alien. She was nervous. She was scared. She didn't know what to do.
For sure.
And Archer had to convince her in front of everyone, look, we need your help. I need you to do this. Like, it's okay if you're not perfect. And you could tell she was getting a little glassy-eyed.
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
I was like, oh, that's an interesting touch. She really got into that moment. And she sold it. I thought she did a good job.
I agree. I enjoyed her in this episode. I thought she did a very good job. And I mean, there's no shying away from it. She is the core of this episode. And the episode lives and dies on her ability to convey that emotion.
Well, like, this heavy-handed slug allegory, that's
what I'm saying. We didn't need it. She did a fine job.
Yes, she was fine. She is that representative of the young child that's nervous to go out into the world, and at the end of the show, she conquers that.
Yeah.
She proves she does have what it takes. Maybe she didn't think she did. Even if she didn't, she gave it her best shot.
Maybe I wouldn't have minded the worm stuff so much if it didn't make it. If Phlox did end up feeding it to the bat or whatever.
Well, at the end of the episode, they drop it off in a blue screen planet.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do their process shots look so obvious?
I don't know.
There was during really the dining room scene with DePaul, Trip, and Archer. They show it. Yeah, Starfield in warp behind them. And the compositing was rough. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't remember it looking like that.
Pretty much worked that
on like TNG or DS9.
No.
That's very strange.
Yeah, I don't know why. I really don't.
Well,
tell me something. This has always struck me about Enterprise, at least in the first couple seasons. I think it does change. I know this is only one episode removed from the pilot, but do you find the show visually, and I'm talking color-wise, to be a little bland?
Yeah, I knew you were going to go there. Drab is what I was going to say. Drab? Yes.
Boy, they needed some color on that.
It's very, I mean, the set dressing is very gray in the bridge, and it's muted colors.
I mean, even though they're wearing blue uniforms, even they seem muted.
They do.
I think maybe around the third season or so, it's like
they put T'Pol in brighter clothing.
Yeah, something. It seems more colorful and more contrasting.
I think they do liven the colors up, but I agree. Yes, it does feel a little bland.
It's like sleepy to look at.
Yes, but all in all, that's not too bad.
No, it's just an observation.
It still looks good.
Sure. Maybe it doesn't help the fact that it's shot TV style. People accuse the motion picture of being bland in its design, its color schemes and all that. The uniforms and the interior, because it's all gray and taupe and all that. But it looks like a damn movie, and it looks contrasty, and it looks good. I think maybe what really hurts this is the fact that it's flat TV lighting. Maybe if it was more contrasty, it would pop better.
But
it's just an observation.
Not every scene was that flat. Like I noticed, yes, on the bridge, it usually is pretty even. But in the dining room scene, it wasn't. There was some shadows and
a little better.
Yeah. So it's not. TNG was very, in the later seasons, was like that. Very even lighting everywhere.
It was, but it was very colorful. So it made up a little bit.
That's true. That's a good point.
Anyway, so let's see. Yeah, there was a lot of good moments with Hoshi. I thought it did a good job of showing our heroes. Starfleet. This is our first time. It's our first time running into. Well, what do we do? The Suliban was different because they were actively trying to get something. Get Klang back. Mm-hmm. But with this, it was a bit of a moral dilemma. Do we even go on there? Well, what's the appropriate thing to do? Mm-hmm. If this were TNG, you just beam on, and if you don't like it, you beam out. This is different. You got to dock. You got to. Trip was Malcolm wanted to blow a hole through their hull, and Archer's like, "Well, hold on." That
was a funny moment.
Well, sure. He's like, apologized.
Just set a few explosives right here and hit, and he's like, "Well, hold on a second."
And he looks at it and he goes, "Sorry, kid, you don't get to blow anything up."
Well, that's Malcolm. He just wants to blow everything up.
I know. That was funny. But I like that it's more tactile, that boarding a ship is a much bigger deal than for TNG. I mean, they run into the Promethean battlecruiser. They just beam on. That's it. It's over. It takes seconds. This is different. This is an expedition. Mm-hmm. And you can't just beam out. If something goes wrong, they're kind of stuck. They got to get out on their own.
Why didn't they just beam on?
Because they've established that the transporters are new, and Archer does not trust them yet.
Yeah, that is something we didn't talk about in the previous pod, that they were still treating it as an experiment. They were beaming cargo, but not people.
Well, they said that it's rated for human use.
But no one wants to try it.
No, and even when they beam Archer at the end of it, they were like, okay, hope this works.
And, there's that theory that when they beam someone, they're actually killing them.
Well, they have a whole episode about that in season 4.
Season 4?
I think it's season 4. Yeah, it's where the guy that created the transporters.
Wait, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
let's save that for when.
But they have it's just a throwaway line. He's like, "Now I don't want to get into the damn argument that it's a copy and you're killing him." He's like, "We're not going there." And you're like, "Okay, they settled that." Okay, I like that. But yeah, I like it. In the pilot when they beam Archer, he's touching himself like, "Am I okay? Is my arm coming out of my head?" They don't know, so that's why they do it. Mm-hmm. And that adds a level of difference to the show. Although I gotta tell you, why would you design a ship where your shuttle has to be lowered from a bar that comes out the bottom? Wouldn't you just want a door that you could just fly straight out of? Why would you add that extra complexity?
Oh, it goes down.
Yeah, it lowers it, and they have to separate.
The shuttle bay of the Enterprise.
Yeah,
that's right.
That just seems like a design flaw. Like that only works if you think you will never run into problems, if you're never racing to get back on or get off. Why wouldn't you put that somewhere in the ship where you could just open a big door and fly out?
I think they were going for logically, yes, but I think they were going for the modern influence of
a submarine and a submersible coming down.
I wasn't thinking of a submarine. I was thinking of actually like when they were first doing supersonic flights, they would take them up. They would take like the X1.
Oh,
it was
right.
attached to
Yeah,
a larger
yeah,
plane, and it would detach, but it was on the bottom. And,
maybe, but I just think, boy, why would they do that? That just seems like such a bad idea.
Do they abandon that concept later on?
I would have been content if they literally just docked on the side of the ship.
do they? Do they abandon that later on? They change
that's always part of it. That's how the ship was designed.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not until the theoretical, as in fan books, where they add a secondary hull and it has a shuttle bay that they get around that.
Okay.
But I always thought that was an interesting choice and not a good one because it just seems like it's a recipe for disaster.
I suppose it doesn't bother me that much.
Well, when you see it in this episode, they run into a problem. They're trying to connect to that bar to get on, and they get shaken off because the ship was getting shot at. If you just had a big hole, you could fly in, done. Why would you do that?
Yeah, I think that's nitpicking a little bit.
Maybe. I'm not. It doesn't make the episode bad. It's just a comment on the show as a whole. And why would you do that? I don't know. Maybe because it would add dramatic tensions later. You know, getting on and off the ship isn't easy. You know, it just adds to the complexity. Maybe it could be that simple. Which fine, I get what you're doing. You know. I mean, their torpedoes are about as effective as rocks at this point, you know, which is good. And I like that. I do like that gets addressed as the series progresses, where Archer's like, you know, we don't have.
It's just not. We're not enough.
We're not ready with weaponry, you know, to defend ourselves against especially when they run into the Klingons. They're like, oh my lord.
Well, that's kind of, you know, the drama of the matter. That's what the Vulcans are telling them. You're not ready.
Yeah,
you're not ready to go out there yet.
Well, the Vulcans, it's more than just their technology. It's
other things. Yes. But I think anyway, I think those are all the thoughts I have, unless you had anything else you wanted to add.
No, I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers it.
I'm going to ask for your final grade on Fight or Flight.
All right. I'm going to give this episode a solid B+.
Wow, you went higher than I thought you'd go.
What did I give the pilot?
A B.
Come on. I think this was better than the pilot. I think it was.
Really?
Yeah, well, the pilot had those lulls. This doesn't really have a lull. I would give this.
Well, that was an hour and a half. This was 45 minutes.
Well, I mean, it's not like 90-minute movies can't be totally engaging the whole time. It was a slightly better episode, so I would give this a B+.
Okay, I'm going to give this one a B-. I thought it was good, but not great. As a follow-up, I thought it was fine. Mm-hmm. It didn't set me on fire or anything like that.
What could have raised the grade for you?
Oh, gosh, I have no idea.
Within reason.
I think if the characters were given a little bit more things to wrestle with, the other characters. I mean, I didn't see anything out of Mayweather or Trip.
Well, I like that. You did with Mayweather though.
Did we?
When Malcolm is tripping out because the torpedoes aren't working, and he's like, "Well, I'm glad we haven't run into anyone because we wouldn't be ready. The torpedoes aren't ready." And Mayweather kind of blows him off, and he's like, "You know, my dad was in space 20 years. About 6 times did he ever run into a problem." You know, he was like, for the most part, our experiences were, he had a different perspective. That was interesting. Granted, it was the only one that he
said
offered.
that in this episode?
He did.
Okay, I guess
when they're in the torpedo bay.
Okay, I guess I missed that part. All right.
I enjoyed that. It was a slightly different perspective for someone who's been in space. You know, he grew up in space.
I suppose I just didn't find what they found that exciting. And I found their reaction to it to be a little stupid. Like I mentioned when we started the pod, I said, well, when they find this crew dead and their blood's being sucked out, they don't come to the rational thing that most people would, which is
get out.
We need to get out of here because those people are coming back.
Yeah.
They're collecting it for some reason. Let's go. They didn't do that. I thought that was pretty lame. And we didn't really get, not that it was wholly necessary, but we had no idea who these aliens were, what their motives were exactly.
No, and I'm fine with that, though.
A little bit more background in that, and that would have helped a little bit.
All right. I mean, I partly, as far as how I would have improved it, I would say that, you know, because Hoshi freaks out, but everyone else is kind of chill about it. And I
You mean
think
when they encountered the
bodies hanging
dead
and all
bodies,
that.
yeah.
I really do. I mean, I'm not saying Archer and whoever else was there. Phlox. Was it Phlox? Who else was there?
Phlox went on the second
Oh,
trip.
right. Well, whoever was there the first time. I'm not saying they should have freaked out, but they should have been like, okay, everyone, arm your weapons. We're getting out because these guys could become. No, if anything's going to happen, we need to be on our ship when it does. You know, we'll figure out what to do from there. But for now, we get off this ship, and I think that would have added to the tension, you know, of the moment, because now they realize that they do have a genuine problem, and like T'Pol points out, they're coming back, you know, so they know that immediately. They know there is a potential threat, and I think they should have acted like it.
Well, what would have been if you were captain?
Okay,
What would you have done?
if I saw the bodies
Yeah,
and all of that,
you're in command. What's your command decision after you discover them?
I would have called the ship and say, do you see anything in scanning range? Like how far can you see? And basically, if someone entered sensor range, how much time would we have? And if we had enough time, I would, bare minimum, cut them down, lay them down. And while someone's doing that, I would ask someone else, hey, try and get into their database while we have a little bit of time. So like he wanted to do, at the bare minimum, send a message. Something is coming back and you probably don't want to be there, or at least wait in hiding somewhere. But if we have time, that would be my thing. If we have time, let's police the bodies and try and get into their database to see who they are. But outside of, say, maybe a 10-minute window, if that's what we would have from scanning to when they get there, we're out. Because I think strategically that is the right thing to do, the smart thing to do. I like that he went back and that it really bothered him, but I do think that that element should have been handled differently, and you know, what it would have added to the threat that Enterprise is going to continue to have as they make their way through the galaxy for the first time. They don't know what to do. They're outgunned. They don't know.
Well,
they just don't know.
I think Archer made a bad call as a captain. I know that's the point of the episode.
In what sense?
When he got there and they saw what was happening, they should have immediately left. He should have thought of the welfare of his crew. They had no idea who did this, what kind of power they had. No idea. And it was not worth risk. The crew of this alien ship was already dead.
Yeah.
To protect his crew, he should have sent a message to, if he could find tried to find out where this alien craft came from, go to the planet or wherever they find one similar, try to tell them, hey, we found this, somebody killed them, you go deal with it, sorry it happened.
Right.
And you know, when they left, and then he made the decision to, we shouldn't have run away like that, we have to go back, we have to do something. Bad call, because now you're risking your crew.
Now the chances of running into them are even
Have
greater.
increased.
Yeah.
And yes, that's the point of the episode. I get it. But
what is the point? Tell me what the point was.
Well, because
what did he learn?
They're trying to make a point that humans don't know what the hell they're doing out there. They don't know what they're going to run into. They think they have what it takes to match up, but they don't.
So your opinion is that Archer made two wrong choices.
Yeah.
One, they should have left right away, and two, they should not have gone back.
Yeah, he made bad calls both times.
So he learned nothing, right?
I think Archer learns as the series goes, but that's the point. He doesn't know what they're going to run into. Like we just said, later on, he realizes we needed more freaking guns, man.
Yeah.
But now he doesn't know that.
Maybe
He's arrogant in a lot of ways.
No, he is.
And brash.
And surely he recognized that both the enemy ship that they run into and the friendly one that comes up, both of them outclassed him. You know, that of the friendlies blew up those other guys with like little effort.
Yeah.
I think instead of the worm, a little more attention, because they had time, a little more time should have been given to even maybe if not to Hoshi, to another character, saying, like Malcolm, going, you know, do you guys realize like how much danger we're in? You know, we've never used this stuff against anyone. You know, we need to test this stuff out first. You know, anything just to increase the tension. But instead of the worm scene at the end, maybe there should have been a bit, and they have it in other episodes where Archer realizes they need to do things differently. Maybe he should have had a moment just with T'Pol. You know, this isn't a bridge conversation to say essentially that cheesy speech that they've had in every Trek episode at some point, where the captain goes, "You were wrong this time, but you could have easily been right."
Oh, sure.
You know,
sure.
but basically where he could acknowledge, you know, we had to do our human duty, but I'm not saying we're unprepared, but we need to be more prepared, you know, because that could have gone badly. We got lucky. And he should have acknowledged that, because as a good captain, you have to...
I don't think he should have said that. I think T'Pol should have said that to him, and he not respond in any way.
But
I think
acknowledge
that on his face.
I like that even better. But it's addressed. Yeah. I like that.
If she just walked up to him and said, "You got lucky,"
we all did.
The crew got lucky. Yeah, it could have gone much different.
That could have been done in the time that Hoshi went down to the CGI planet at the end.
It would have been better.
I think that would have been a better button, because that's what this show is about. Is them getting out there. I don't care about the damn slug. Show me how they are going to deal with these situations that we're not used to seeing our Starfleet people in. That would have been more interesting. That's what this series largely needed, was a little more teeth and a little more willingness to show our crew really not winning. You know, they win, but they don't. You know, they didn't die. That's how they won. You know, I think they should have dug into that more. And this episode had a couple instances where they really could have done that. And that would have made it an A episode, in my opinion.
If it had ended that way, I would have graded it higher.
Okay.
Probably in a B or B plus range, I would think.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that we graded it. We talked about it.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say.
No, I think that about it.
All right. Do you know what the next one is?
I want to say this real quick. I don't mean to be overly critical. We're just breaking it.
That's our point, right?
I feel like it sounds like I didn't like it. I did like the episode.
Well, you gave it a B plus.
I did. I'm just
our whole thing here is to deconstruct it.
First of all, I like the series, and I did like this episode.
Well, yeah.
There's going to be episodes I don't like.
I hope people don't think we don't like the series.
No. But I did like this episode, but I do think it could have been stronger with a couple minor adjustments, is all I'm saying.
I mean, it's easy from our position to say that, you know, watching it from the outside.
Sure.
But I think they still did a good job.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, a B minus is a good grade.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah. But I don't know what comes next. I didn't remember this episode at all. Like, it was almost completely fresh.
As soon as it started, I remembered it.
Okay, I didn't.
I think what might be next, I guess we'll find out. I know if it's not next, it's the next one, where they get stuck on a couple people are stuck on a planet and they're hallucinating.
Yeah.
That might be the next one.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I know there's like a stinker early on and just waiting for it to happen. I thought it was going to be this one.
About,
okay.
Where they find the humans that are
is that
lost an lost colony.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's it.
Okay. Yeah. And the one alien woman goes by the name Nadette, but her real name was Bernadette, and she's like, "Bernadette, that was my name."
Okay, I don't remember that part.
You'll remember it.
All right, I'll see you in the next one.
All right.